Hello and welcome. After history, I'm starting with the first chapter of civics, that is power sharing. In this chapter, we'll take a discussion on democracy. We have noted that in democracy, all power does not rest with one organ of the government. When you talk about organ, it is executive, judiciary, and legislature. So, an intelligent sharing of power among these organ is very important to design a democracy. So in this chapter we carry the idea of power sharing forward. We start with two stories from Belgium and Sri Lanka. Now these stories are taken so that we will come to know about how democracies in their country dealt with the demand for power sharing. So from the stories we will come into some conclusion, or we can say we'll get some general conclusion about the need for power sharing in democracy. And because of these stories, we will be allowed to discuss various forms of power sharing that will be taken up in this chapter. So to begin with, we will be taking up first of all our topic, that is the first topic, Belgium and Sri Lanka. So let us see or talk about Belgium first of all. But before that, you have to answer this question: what is the ethnic composition of Belgium? This answer lies within the explanation itself. Belgium is a small country in Europe. It has borders with France, the Netherlands, Germany, and Luxembourg. And then if we look at the population of Belgium, we'll see that it has a population of a little over 1 crore. But the ethnic composition of this small country is very complex. Complex means very difficult to understand, because out of the total population of Belgium, 59% lives in Flemish region and speaks Dutch language, whereas 40% of the population live in a Wallonia region and speak French, and remaining 1% of the Belgium speak German. So you can see that they have a mixture of different types of people speaking different language. But in capital city, that is Brussels, 80% of people speak French, whereas 20% are Dutch speaking people. So the problem lies within this area only, because the minority speaking community was relatively rich and powerful, and this was resented by the Dutch speaking community, who got the benefit of economic development and education much later than the French people. So this led to tension between the Dutch speaking and French speaking communities during the 1950s and 1960s. And this tension was because of who will get more power or who will get more rights. This tension was more acute in the capital city, Brussels. The problem with Brussels was that the Dutch-speaking people, they are more in the country, but in the capital they are in minority. So they have very less rights, or they have no power at all. So we'll talk about Belgium later on. But now let us compare the same situation with another country. And this time we will be talking about our neighboring country, that is Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is an island nation just few kilometers off the southern coast of Tamil Nadu. It has about 2 crore people or population. Before we proceed further, you have to take note of this question again. What is the ethnic composition of Sri Lanka? The answer lies within the explanation. So let's see. Sri Lanka has a diverse population. The major social groups are the Sinhala speakers with 74% and the Tamil speakers 18%. Among Tamils, there are two subgroups. Tamil natives of the country are called Sri Lankan Tamil, comprising 13%, whereas there is another group which is from the neighboring country, that is India, whose forefathers came from India as plantation workers during colonial period and are called Indian Tamils. So both the Tamils, they need some power. So let's see what do they do here. Most of the Sinhali or Sinhala speaking people are Buddhists, while most of the Tamils are Hindus or Muslims. Now the problem lies is within the ethnic composition only. There are about 7% Christians who are both Tamil and Sinhalas. So that was all about the ethnic composition of Sri Lanka. So now let us take the case of Belgium once again. In Belgium, the Dutch could have taken advantage of its majority over French and German speaking population, as it was their own country. And if they could have done this, this would have pushed the conflict among communities further. There would be lots of problem among both the communities, and this conflict would have lead to a very massive partition of the country. Both the sides would have claimed control over Brussels. But the Dutch did not do that. Whereas when you compare the same situation in Sri Lanka, the Sinhalas enjoyed bigger majority and imposed its will on the entire country, just opposite to the Dutch. Now let us look at what happened in both these countries after power sharing or before power sharing. So let's see. The Belgian leaders, in order to solve the problem of cultural diversities, adopted a very compromising path. They planned to do something so that everyone can live properly or happily. So they amended their constitution 4 times so that everyone can live peacefully within the same country without harming any community. They thought of giving rights to each and every citizen of the country. It was declared that no single community can make decision unilaterally. So a step was taken for Brussels. Now Brussels has a separate government in which both the communities enjoyed equal representations. Now we know that French were more in number than Dutch. Then also both will be given equal chances. And because of this measure, there was no fight between two communities, and the country was safe from division on the basis of linguistic lines. So now we will see how Sri Lanka have tackled with the problem. Sri Lanka presents a very different story than the Belgium. Okay, here what happened is that the leaders of the majority community, that is Sinhala, adopted a series of changes to establish supremacy. Now for this supremacy, an act was passed in 1956. And this act recognized Sinhala as the official language, disregarding Tamil and the Tamil population. So for this, what did they do? The government followed preferential policies that favored Sinhala applicants for university position and government jobs. Only Sinhala can get the jobs, better jobs, whereas Tamilians cannot. These measures gradually increased the feeling of alienation among the Sri Lankan Tamils, as they get no chances over any jobs and all. Their relations with the Sinhala community got disturbed over time, which finally resulted in civil war. Now what have we learned from these two stories? Okay, now they all had something to tell us. First of all, from Belgium we learned that in Belgium the leaders realized that the unity of the country could be maintained only by respecting the feelings and interests of different communities living in the country. So they worked on the principle of accommodation of all by mutual understanding. A possible division of the country on linguistic line was also avoided because of the mutual understanding. From Sri Lanka we learn the following lesson. If a majority community learns to face its dominance over others and refuses to share power, it can undermine the unity of the country, which can face to lots of destruction. Now our next topic is majoritarianism in Sri Lanka. Now what is this? Let's see. Sri Lanka emerged as an independent country in 1948. The leaders of the majority community adopted a series of changes to establish supremacy, as we had seen in the previous part. So for that, what did they do is that they passed an act in 1956 which recognized that Sinhala can be the official language, and they disregard Tamil. The government followed preferential policies that favored Sinhala applicants for university positions and government jobs. A new constitution stipulated that the state shall protect and foster Buddhism. All these government measures gradually increased the feeling of alienation among the Sri Lankan Tamils. They felt major political parties led by the Buddhist Sinhala leaders was not sensitive to their language and culture. The Sri Lankan Tamil felt that the constitution and the government policies denied the equal political rights and discriminated against them in getting jobs and other opportunities and ignored their interest. As a result, the relation between the Sinhala and Tamil communities strained over time. So in order to stand out in front of the government, the Sri Lankan Tamil launched parties and struggles for the recognition of their language, that is Tamil language as an official language, and also for regional autonomy and equality of opportunity in securing education and jobs. But their demand for autonomy to provinces populated by the Tamil was repeatedly denied. By 1980s, several political organizations were formed demanding an independent Tamil Elam. And this distrust between the two communities turned into a widespread conflict, which was also termed as the Civil War, and because of which there were lots of problems that rose in Sri Lanka. As a result of this civil war, thousands of people from both communities have been killed. Not only killed, they also were displaced, or they are moved out from their country. Many families were forced to leave the country as refugees, and many more lost their earnings or livelihoods. By the time they could understand, the civil war has already caused a terrible setback to the social, cultural and economic life of the country. So everything which started should come to an end. So the civil war also ended in 2009, but it already had its effect in Sri Lanka. Now let us move on to a new topic, that is accommodation in Belgium. The term accommodation means to accommodate different types of people living in Belgium. So let's see what did the leaders do. The leaders took a different path in order to accommodate different citizens of Belgium. They recognized the existence of regional differences and cultural diversities. Okay, they had no issues regarding who will live and who will not. Between 1970s and 1993, they amended the constitution 4 times so that they can work out an arrangement for the people who are living in Belgium, and that they would be able to live together within the same country without any kind of conflicts or fight. So the ideas or the arrangement which was taken up by the Belgian government was very different from any other country and was very innovative in a sense that people really welcome the idea. Here are some of the elements of the Belgian model, or what steps were taken by the Belgian government. Number 1, Constitution prescribes that the number of Dutch and French speaking ministers shall be equal in the central government. No one will be more or less. Then some special laws require the support of majority of members for each linguistic group. Thus, no single community can make decisions unilaterally or single-handed. So let us see point number 2. Here we can see that the central government have given powers to state governments of the 2 regions of the country. Not only that, the central government also said that the state government are not subordinate to the central government. They are free to decide and work upon their plans. Then point number 3 says that Brussels, which will have a separate government, should have equal communities representation. Now the French speaking people accepted equal representation in Brussels because the Dutch speaking people also accepted the idea of equal representation in the central government, which is why there was no conflict between these 2 communities. So now let's see what is point number 4. So in point number 4 we can see that apart from the central and the state government, there was a third kind of government which is known as community government. From the term community means it is a government which is elected by people belonging to Dutch, French and German speaking, no matter where they live. That is why once again they all have a better understanding and running the government. This government has the power regarding cultural, educational and language related issues. So the question is, why power sharing is desirable? Now power sharing is desirable for various reasons. So two different sets of reasons can be given in favor of power sharing. So let's see what is it. So firstly, power sharing is good because it helps to reduce the conflict between social groups. When you say social groups, means different types of communities. Then since these social conflicts often lead to violence and political instability, so that is why power sharing is a good way to ensure the stability of political order. If there is no power sharing, there will be lots of conflicts. Once again, we are talking only about the understanding. So imposing the will of majority community over other undermine the unity of nations. If you try to force someone, there will be always tension in the nation. So if the majority people try to be oppressive over the minority, it always brings ruin to the majority as well. Means we will always face lots of problem. Okay, now secondly, power sharing is the very spirit of democracy. So that is why in power sharing or in a democratic rule, power sharing is always exercised. Okay, the power is given to each and everyone who lives within it and whoever is working within the system. Now people have a right to be consulted and how they are to be governed. We can decide, we can select a government whom we like. A legitimate government is one where citizens through participation acquire a stake in the system. We always decide who will be ruling us or who will be the next prime minister. The two reasons can be given two different names. The first set is known as prudential and the second one is known as moral. Okay, so now let's see the next topic, that is forms of power sharing. Here we'll see how many types of power sharing is there. The idea of power sharing has emerged in opposition as an undivided political power. So when we say undivided political power, it means that they believe that all power of government must reside upon one person or group of person located at one place. They wanted to say that if power is to be divided, then what will happen? Quick decision may not take place. Okay, that is why they said power sharing cannot be with many person. It can be only with one. But these have changed with the ideas of emergence of democracy. As democracy came up, the idea of power sharing also changed. One basic principle of democracy is that people are the source of all political power. Whoever you are, you have the right to elect your own representative. So in a democracy, people rule themselves through institution of self-government. We all are free to decide whom are we going to see in our next election. So likewise, in a good democratic government, due respect is given to different groups of people and their ideas. Okay, so everyone has a voice in shaping of public policies. Either you like it or don't like it, you have to say. Okay, so whatever policies are passed, they just cannot pass it on their own. Therefore, they have to follow some rules or regulations. So in democracy, political power should be distributed among many citizens of the country. And then power sharing arrangements can take many forms. Okay, when you say many forms, means in different structure the power sharing is done. So as we are talking about the form number 1 is that power is shared among different organs of government such as the legislature, executive and judiciary. So this system is given one name, and the name is that horizontal distribution of power. And this is because power is shared. Okay, here it allows the government or the organs of the government to be placed at the same level to exercise different power. No one is greater than the other or authoritative than the other.